supports unpaid family caregivers at home for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. We're having conversations with experts across the country to talk about all aspects of the caregiver journey. I'm Michelle Darwin, co-founder and executive director of Windward Foundation, joined by our co-founder and president, Sean McDermott. Hi, Sean.
Hey, how are you today?
Doing well, doing well. Our guest today is Michelle Stair, insurance agent with Bankers Life in the North Texas area, but also licensed in Arizona and North Carolina. Michelle works with families to protect their financial security as they prepare for retirement. Today, we want to talk about our aging parents and things to think about regarding long-term care. Thanks for joining us, Michelle.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, Michelle. So this is, we're actually pretty excited to talk to you today because one of the things that we deal with a lot at the foundation is that people tend to start doing planning when they're in crisis, but what we really want to do is have our caregivers and families really start thinking about things before they're in crisis. So when do you think families and their children and extended families should be talking to their parents about long-term care?
That's a great question, and I see that throughout a lot of my customers on a daily basis. They should be talking to them early on and as frequently as possible. I don't think that there's any one conversation that's going to resolve, kind of the needs of the aging parent, but I think that initiating the conversation and making sure that they're coming at it from a point of perspective of what does the parent want, making sure that they are not putting them in a position where maybe they're defensive about it, but really having them understand that it's their choice and their decision as to how they want to be cared for as they continue to age or experience a health crisis. And so it's really important that I think children start having those conversations very early on and just continue to have them as frequently as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. As you know, our foundation focuses on the unpaid family caregivers at home with someone with dementia. I think it's important for families to understand just how expensive memory care can be. I think that all of us as children, we look at our parents as the ones that always took care of us and assume that they have it figured out. I wonder how many people actually know that in our area, it can cost in excess of $12,000 a month for memory care, which is all privately paid. It's privately paid. Medicare does not cover long-term care or memory care. So I think most adult children and people in general feel that Alzheimer's or these issues aren't going to happen to them. But, what do we do with that? How do we help families understand that, everyone's aging, we're all aging. We're going to need to think about this.
Right. So statistically, 70% of all aging folks are going to need some sort of assisted care, long-term care, extended care in the future. And it accounts for just a little over 50% of their retirement income. So when you're looking at what Medicare pays for, what it doesn't pay for, if you've been hospitalized, Medicare will pay for the first 20 days of skilled nursing. Beyond that, there's a daily charge that you would be responsible for, and it's $176 a day. And that's what we see in Texas. It can, beyond that, you are looking at no coverage at all by Medicare, to your point. So it really is important that folks look at how are they going to self-fund that care. In Texas, you might find that assisted living or some kind of memory care might be a little less than what you're experiencing, somewhere around $7,000 or $8,000 a month, but it really just depends on the facility. And a lot of plans look at kind of sharing that cost in terms of not just providing from an extended care or long-term care, but sharing that expense so that it doesn't eat up your retirement. And so I think a lot of folks just don't really kind of think about what that expense might look like or how it'll affect them financially. You think about an individual who, let's say, has saved for their retirement, and now they're seeing that this expense is coming their way. They may not have enough to be able to pay for the facility that they thought they were going to be able to go into. And so, what do they do now? They're going to limit their options. They're going to limit the choice of facility that they can go to, and they're also going to be in a position where they might have to spend down in order to qualify for Medicaid. And if they're on Medicaid, their options reduce even further from there.
Yeah, I know, Michelle, when we put Dad, into the memory care for him, I mean, he was there for 9 months, and I think we spent almost $70,000, or they did, right? $70,000. So it's astronomical, and, you think about, so we're in Northern Virginia, right? Fairfax County, which is probably one of the higher income areas in the United States, which means our expenses are higher. But, you've got average, I think the average family income in Fairfax County is $120,000 a year, which is very high compared to the rest of the country. But you're talking about potential healthcare costs or facility costs of $140,000 a year at $12,000 a month, and that's after taxes, right? So you got to earn $200,000 just to pay for that, and it's just people can't do it, right? The math doesn't work anywhere, right, in the country. So we have in Texas where our father was in the facility, it was maybe $6,000 a month, I think, something like that, Michelle. That's $100,000. I mean, so the math just doesn't work, right? And so this is a huge crisis for people, and we're seeing it affect everybody from, having to work 2 jobs, having to quit a job because it's cheaper to take care of the person, but then that puts a heavy financial burden on the family because there's less income, but it also puts a heavy psychological burden on the family because now they're basically home health caring their loved one. We're seeing there's a lot of issues in the corporate world around productivity. And so it's one of the things of our mission at the foundation is to engage with the corporate community to help in this problem, because it's not just about physical health of the employee or their specific mental health. It's the impact of dealing with caregivers every day outside of work and the impact that's having on them.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that always comes to mind is, we worry about the caregiver, the family, and the health of the healthy parent comes into question when they're under all of this stress, right? So if the added stress is that you can't afford to put your loved one into memory care where they may be safer and better cared for because you have kind of reached your limit on what you can do at home, but you can't afford it, then you're talking about a whole added layer of stress. And unfortunately, it's not a short thing. Our father was here for only 8 months, 9 months. Many people are in long-term care for years, even with dementia.
Yeah, and I think that also just impacts, to your point, Sean, the employee, right? So if you're a caregiver and you've had to leave your position to care for an ailing parent, then you're affected. There's long-term financial impact that's going to affect that individual in ways that are beyond the immediate. So not only is it just a loss of income, but there's loss of income growth potential because they've been out of the marketplace. So they've lost out on some new skills. They've lost out on advancement opportunities, and it's going to take them a little bit more time to get back into the workplace as well as they're competing against others that have continued to be in the workplace. So there's a negative impact there that can be damaging for that individual, and then just the life of and the health of their own retirement. What does that mean for them so that as they continue to age, are they going to have the financial resources for themselves when they get to that point because they've had to come away from the employment market?
Sure, and there's the impact of the employer. I have multiple companies, and it costs us to replace people. And the better the people and the higher skilled people, and we have a lot of high skilled people in our consulting organization. It costs a lot of money, right? So if somebody leaves and we can't backfill that position for a couple of weeks, there's lost revenue, but then there's the recruiting costs. So there's a big impact to the organization, as well as, I know Michelle and I know this firsthand. Doctors aren't open at night, right? So when you need to set up a doctor's appointment or go run an errand or go pick up your loved one and take them somewhere, that's time out of the day, right? And so there's a lot of hidden costs in the corporate world to this too, and that's one of the reasons why we strive to engage the corporate world. So we've also learned that a lot of adult children, especially those in different geographical areas, aren't really in the loop with regards to the health conditions or the medications of their loved ones. So what is the criteria for long-term care, and when is it too late?
That's a really great question. So there are things called active daily living, so ADLs for short. So if you are at a point where you, even with just one, cannot perform activities around eating, feeding yourself, bathing, transferring, like getting out of bed, getting into, getting down the stairs, if you require a wheelchair, if there's already a cognitive impairment, you're going to have you're not going to be able to health qualify for assistance from a long-term care plan. So it's important to have those conversations early and often before you need it, so that it's in place already, because it is one of the more difficult coverages to qualify for, just based on health qualifying questions. There's not a lot of companies that even provide that coverage as well. Bankers is definitely one of the few that does. But for what you'd be looking at from a health qualifying perspective, you'd want to take action before you became ill. And so that's really kind of like taking that crystal ball and trying to figure out, at what point do I start looking at this? And I've had, experiences with individuals that have had instances as young as 50, and others start looking at it, as they draw closer into their 60s. So it really is. It's not a one size fits all, for sure. So it benefits you to sit down and really have those conversations early on and figure out if that works within, your financial long-term plan and where you want to go and how you want to cover your retirement.
So if you end up getting let's say a long-term care policy, how do they work? Do you start paying? So I'm 53, right? And let's say I wanted to get one now. Would I start paying now, and then when I actually started to use it, let's say I'm 70 or 73, would I then start benefiting from it? And then I don't know, you don't make payments after that? How does it actually work?
Yeah, no, you continue to make the payment. So it's similar to like a homeowner's insurance policy, let's say. So homeowner's insurance, you buy a home, you buy a policy to cover your home, safeguard it from anything that could potentially happen to it. The instance of that potentially happening is about 6%. Yet everybody buys a homeowner's insurance policy, right? Here in a health situation, you have a 70% chance that you're going to need it. And most people don't purchase it, which is really interesting because you have a higher instance to have that need. So if you have a policy in place, it's providing you with a pool of money, essentially. And so there are different kinds of plans that are customizable, but really the intention is to help offset some of those costs that you might experience out of your pocket. So you're already going to have income that you're bringing in on a monthly basis, whether that's from Social Security or whether it's from a retirement plan, or maybe you were already continuing to work, so you're still working even on a part-time basis. That income still comes in and it still pays for the care that you're going to need out of pocket. But where the long-term care can help is to supplement the additional expenses to go along with that. So it's basically a pool of money that you use as needed, and it can vary. So if you, let's say you have a home health, you have somebody that you need to come in and help out while you're at work. So that person, the home health aide, can come in They can assist with bathing, eating, transferring. They can buy groceries. They can clean the house. They can be there to assist your loved one, your parent. And then you come home from work, and then you're there for the evening. It essentially also can give those caregivers a break where they're not getting one today because they're on 24/7. So those are the kinds of ways that you could utilize a plan that way.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting subject, and I feel like I'm monopolizing it, Michelle. but um, but you had a
No,
really good analogy. You had a really good analogy, and with regards to homeowners insurance, right? You really, I never thought about having a homeowners insurance policy until I bought a home, right? But what we need to be doing right now is getting people to think about long-term care before they need it, right? And so you talk about a pool of money. So is it you buy a policy and you get X amount of dollars, and what happens if you run out of those dollars, 10 years into, let's say you go into 10 years of home health care and you run out at year 8? Does things like that happen?
It does, yeah. There's only so much, right, that you have to kind of plan for what you think might potentially happen. And I think that's the important role of an agent, a professional coming in and talking with you about your family health history, your own health history. And these are things that we look at when we're writing a policy. Is we look at the Medical Information Bureau, which is really an organization of companies that pull information from insurance companies, so they know, really your health history. We look at prescription drugs that have been prescribed. You may be even in a situation, some people aren't aware of it, but if you've been prescribed a drug and you go and you pick up that drug and you never take that drug, the assumption is you're on that drug and you're taking that drug. So those are things that we look at, and then we plan accordingly. We look at, what's going to be the need for you, and how much are you going to need in order to cover some of those expenses based on the income that you have coming in, today, and any kind of future income, so that you can plan accordingly. For some folks, they may only need a small pool of money, and there's a multiplier of, maybe a year. For others, it's much more comprehensive, and they may need a multiplier that's, more like 2 or 3 years. And it really just varies on the individual. And that's what I mean by customization. You really need to look at all aspects and all areas of the individual, and make a determination on whether or not that pool of money is the right pool of money for them. And unfortunately, once that pool of money is gone, you are back to self-funding or spending down in order to qualify for Medicaid.
So, there's something about Medicaid that I know we weren't aware of, and when we were caring for our dad, and that it wasn't necessary, right? My parents had the financial means to get him the best care. But one thing a lot of people don't understand, that if a parent runs out of money, or a spouse, if you run out of money, if you're privately paying for memory care or long-term care, and you run out of money and you've spent down and you have to move to Medicaid, it's not super easy. You have to apply to get approval from Medicaid, but you might be in a beautiful facility today that's a private pay facility, and your loved one's going to have to move into a facility that has a bed allotted for Medicaid. And I know in the state of Texas, there's only 3 certified memory care facilities that are certified to take in residents under Medicaid. Now, many other will allow people to come into a memory care facility, but do you really want to put your loved one in a facility that might not have the best the best care behind them? They're not a certified facility, and oh, by the way, it might not be near you. We have a family here, perfect example. They were in a beautiful facility. They loved it, but, her husband ran out of money and had to, switch over to Medicaid. And she was moved to a facility, an hour and a half away from her family, and that's just the only one that would accept someone that given week under Medicaid. And those are kind of things that families, I don't think they really understand. And it's kind of our job, we feel, to educate families and let you know why it's so important to really understand how this all works, because we're all getting older. And of course, we focus on dementia, but even if it's not focused on dementia, we're all getting older and things are going to happen. And we need to do our due diligence to set ourselves up for the best possible care and a life of dignity for our aging parents.
Right. And to your point about Medicaid, it is a government assisted program. So it's going to take a while for someone to qualify. There's paperwork. And they also do a 5-year look back. So if you think about, hey, let me try and, work the system here so that I can move, resources and assets and money, so that we don't run into a situation where we use everything up and now there's no legacy for the kids or the grandkids. Medicaid does a 5-year look back. So they will take into account everything that's happened over the last 5 years in order to qualify you. And it's very difficult to kind of trick the system in that way.
Yeah. Michelle, I know that emotions are a huge barrier, whether we're talking about dementia or not, but, emotions within the family dynamic as our parents are aging, many of us are in different geographic locations. Brought up very good points on, why it's important and really necessary to bring a professional in. But when you meet with families that the parents are interested, are parents able to include their adult children in the conversations and kind of keep them in the loop on what's going on? And I would think that you would encourage that we would encourage adult children to be part of the conversation. But how does that look like from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that anybody who's going to be involved in the care of an aging parent should be involved in that process. And it varies from family to family. So some individuals ask that they just share that information with their kids so that they know what the plan is and they don't need them to be present in the meeting. Others feel that hey, I trust my children. I want them to be included and part of this process so that they're aware of what's happening. I'd like them to attend the meeting. And we're completely open to that as well. Where we run into a little bit of trouble with some of those scenarios with meeting with the children is just scheduling. The kids are working and the parent isn't, maybe in most cases. And so it's difficult to bring them both together. I think through the current health crisis that we're in right now globally, we've modified the way that we do business, which is helping to make things easier. So we can now attend virtual meetings. So similar to what we're doing today, myself and a prospect customer can sit down and review their options. And so if they want to include their financial planner or their CPA or their child, we're happy to include them in that process and talk about what that looks like for them. But in complete transparency, we want everybody who's involved with helping them maintain and preserve their assets going into their retirement are involved in and are aware of what that decision means to that individual.
Well, when we talk about this, Michelle and I have been having this conversation a lot about positive things that are going to come out of this, and we even talked about this before we went live. But one of the things that we've done a couple of broadcasts on around telemedicine, but what you're doing is an extension of that too, right? And that's hopefully one of the things that will come out of this is the people getting more comfortable using virtual technology, especially older people who are not used to using technology like Zoom and things like that, to really expand the conversation, bring more people into it. And I think about, when my dad was going through this prior to him passing away, we didn't have this type of technology. So it was very one-on-one. We were 2 hours away, 3 hours away. Michelle was 5 states away until they moved to Texas with Michelle. But everything is just so much harder. Now you can get on the phone with a doctor and there's laws, they're relaxing the restrictions around telemedicine. You can get on, you can hear the doctor talking about what's going on. We can get on a conversation with, someone like you about long-term planning, and we can hear that, because a lot of times these caregivers and even the people who are in early diagnosis, they don't hear it, right? And they're just, there's so many emotions going on in their head. They don't hear everything. So it's good to have especially adult children on the line so that they can see what's going on and hear it and be that kind of voice of reason.
Absolutely. And we don't want, and I personally don't want my customers to be, I don't want this to be a transaction. I want it to be a relationship. And so that's one of the benefits of, working with, a company like ours, is that, we have over the last 140 years met face to face with individuals and talked about their needs, and come up with solutions to help them to preserve their assets into retirement. But with this the new way of doing business, we're continuing to meet with people face to face as much as we can, virtually. And so we've replaced that, to make it a safe way for them to still get the information and to be able to act in a manner that is according to the timeline that they need. So we don't want to put things off, until things settle down, or, let's wait a couple of months and see how things are happening, because you run the risk of, other health issues arising during that period of time and then not qualifying because of health events that will prevent you from having the coverage that you need. So it's important that we're able to have these kinds of conversations. And I feel that, more and more, as you said, because of this crisis, people are getting on this kind of technology. They're FaceTiming with their kids. They're having these Zoom happy hours, or, church services even. So it's becoming just a natural thing for them to be able to participate in going forward. And that's going to make things easier for them as well.
Good. So as a fellow business owner, feel free to share your thoughts on planning before a crisis, because a lot of adult children are still in the workforce, and crisis mode is a real dangerous place to be. So what are your thoughts on planning before the crisis?
I mean, plan, right? I mean, you have to. I was just talking to somebody before this call. I'm somebody who likes to have a plan A, B, C, and beyond. I just think it's really important that you have an understanding of, at first you have to have the conversation, right? That's first and foremost. Have the conversation with your parents. What do they want to do? What are their thoughts around, if something were to happen to them from a health perspective, what's the plan? How are you going to assist? Because you may, as a child, think, I'm going to assist my parent in any way that they need. It doesn't matter what it is. I will move them into my house. I've got a room ready for them to go. And the parent may think, no, there's no way I'm moving in with you. That is not happening. I don't want that to be the plan. So it really needs to be a conversation with everybody. And it needs to happen early, and it needs to happen often in a way that it's crystal clear. This is the plan that we have going forward. And then I think, bringing a professional in on that conversation, an unbiased person that can help to look at the needs, right? Assess what those needs are, make some recommendations, give them some options to discuss, to talk about, and make sure that they fit within the long-term plan that they have for their retirement health. But it's vital. It's all the things that we talked about early on. You have an individual who has, I belong to the local chamber here as well, and talked with somebody who is struggling within his own business. And he talked to me about his father, and he's showing some signs of dementia, and is not sure, really kind of what the next step is for him. He hasn't been diagnosed with anything. And he's starting to see kind of some signs, and he knows for a fact that, he's going to move in with him. But that's going to affect his ability to, grow and, maintain his own business if he's having to take care of his aging father who's already showing these signs. So he's got to have a plan in place. And if you don't have a plan in place before something happens, it's too late when it does. There's nothing I can do to help somebody who already has health issues that are going to disqualify them. As sad as that is to say, there's just nothing I can do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's such good information. I think, we just need to continue to have this conversation. I would love to have you come back and talk about, our generation and what we should be thinking about, not so much for our parents, but me and my children, kind of reverse it. Right now, we're kind of talking about our older parents. But let's be honest, we're all getting older. I personally don't have a long-term care plan in place. I need to. I don't. Sean, I don't know about you. Do you have a
I
long-term
don't
care?
have one either.
Definitely something that I think we need to, continue talking about for sure.
Mhm.
But Michelle, this has been such an important conversation. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up here, I would like to invite anyone to join the Alzheimer's Caregiver Alliance community. It's a growing community of caregivers across the country, family caregivers at home that are caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease. You can join our community by simply visiting our website, Windward, WINDWARD, foundation.org, or allscaregiveralliance.org. Both will, kind of take you to the same place. But we will continue to have these type of conversations and continue to try to educate families across the country on the best ways to travel this journey from the time of diagnosis, all the way through the process. And Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Michelle.
me. I really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.